Oi, pessoal. Bom dia. Gostaria de dar boas-vindas para vocês.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. You are all mostly welcome to participate at our second day of Internet Exchange Forum and our fourth day on the week of infrastructure. Tomorrow we are going to start and have for the first day the BICOC. We are here on site at Villa Blue Tree, São Paulo, and we are also being broadcasted remotely. And we have simultaneous interpretation in 3 languages, Portuguese, English, and Spanish in the YouTube. But if you rather, you may follow the original language. In the premises, we have in the next room exhibition, and those who haven't visited yet the booths, take a look and visit our sponsors. And at lunchtime, don't miss the exhibition area. The Infrastructure Week is an initiative and it is organized by NIC.br and CGI.br. So I will officially open today's session and invite Eduardo Morales, who will let us know a little bit about AceleraNet and all the workshops and some update of what has happened throughout the year of 2024.
Você tá sem vídeo?
Certo. Bom dia, pessoal. Então, só para a gente começar aqui, eu gostaria de falar um pouco sobre a área de capacitação técnica.
So, good morning. I'm here to share a little bit about technical capacity. Everything is within the Internet Exchange ecosystem. We train our members so they may understand their importance and be able to exchange traffic and also to improve network developers. And a student who has been trained priorly will be able to better answer to any questions that may be raised. How important technical capacity is to our system, and how do we work with this type of capacity building? Well, we work on Layer 8 podcast. This is a project which started in 2020. It happens monthly, and we named it as being the son of the pandemic, a child of the pandemic. Before the pandemic, all workshops were held on site, and during the pandemic, we had to keep on promoting our workshops, especially because we had a critical infrastructure during the pandemic, and workshops could not be stopped. So every month, we throw a new episode about infrastructure. Right now, we are running our 58th episode. We have over 88,000 reproductions, and our podcast works on a niche which is network and technologies. But yet, we have international reach. We are being broadcasted in over 20 countries, and we are listed on top 11 in the Spotify list, as we are a monthly podcast, yet we are ranked pretty well. Take into account that many other podcasts, they are broadcasted weekly, and ours is just monthly, so we are ranked really well in the Spotify.
Para a gente lá qual foi o nosso episódio mais ouvido do ano, como que a gente está na questão, né, dos nossos
year
fãs, né? Então,
and how we are doing with our fans. Out of the 606 fans, we are supposed to be top one, and we have a great number of followers. And those 606 fans, they have listed us as number one in the podcast list. These are the episodes that we had throughout the year. If you didn't have a chance to listen to them, don't miss, and each one of them, they cover a specific technical topic. And this is another way of learning. There are several technical talks about Wi-Fi 7, cybernetics, as well as we have a little bit of NIC.br infrastructure background, the largest IX project in the world with Milton and Julio. And yesterday we have released an episode about the ugly duck. And if you want to learn a bit more about that, we have Edith Ranzini, who has helped to create the first Brazilian computer, to develop it, I mean. BICOP, together with the Regional International Exchange Forum, we carry out one regional forum at each one of the Brazilian regions. And those who are not able to commute, we have some e-learning BCOPs and IPv6, where we had over 4,000 students who had participated at our distance learning workshops. In addition to those, we have some new workshops that were organized together with some sponsors and partners, such as Cisco, Wahai, Datacon, and Ubiquity. NIC.br is constantly supporting all the discussion forums, and you are able to train at the different platforms which are offered by those partners. Let me remind you that anytime that we set a partnership, our main emphasis is on technical content and not advertisement. We choose carefully who will record our videos. We work really hard on choosing who will be behind the scenes. And if anyone would like to set a partnership with the NIC.br, just come and talk to us. We are open to disseminate further knowledge and content to our community. And if you are willing to help, here we are. Intrarede. Intrarede is a group which debates on roundtables about a specific topic. We usually invite 4 to 5 speakers, each one with their own expertise, and we all share experience and try to learn more about a specific content. We carry that out every 2 months. It's also a child of the pandemic. We are right now on our 34 episodes, and with those 6 live episodes that we carried out in the year, we were able to reach 28,000 visualizations. So we have a great number of viewers, and all the talks are available in the YouTube for you to watch anytime you feel like. These are some of the intra-rede projects. Why providers should consider strategies. We talked about automation tools, resilient networks, safe protocols and standards, submarine cables in Latin America, telemetrics, and network monitoring. We try to get the most relevant topics in the current scenario. If you have any additional suggestion of any specific topic which you would like us to go through, send us a message. Give us your suggestion and we'll be willing to add that to our next year's schedule. This is another project, the Capacity Week, Capacitation Week. We work on several tutorials, technical tutorials, which are conducted every semester. Everyone gets really prepared for that week. So throughout the week, we give theoretical and practical classes, and once a day we carry out a training session. We are right now on our 9th edition with over 64,000 visualizations. So our tutorials, they are very popular with several viewers. If you didn't have a chance to visit this week, enroll yourself at our channels. They are always stored in the YouTube channels. If you are a university teacher, a technical teacher, this is a great opportunity to learn and to help your students to learn about topics which are so hard to be taught in a classroom. We try them to invite experts who will teach about those more specific topics, such as privacy in the web, the Tor random routing tool. We also had a flow spec BGP, TR-069, TR-369 for efficiency. We also had a quick talk, and we see that HTTP/3TOS 1.3 as a protocol which is changing in the internet, as this is a new protocol. Not everyone knows exactly how that works. And then we decided to share additional information about the use of this protocol. As we didn't have enough evidence in the literature in Portuguese about this protocol, we decided to give a talk and a special class about that. We have Quick in addition to other protocols working jointly. So these are network automation tools such as Palm and MicroMic. Our team at NIC.br has emphasized incidents in security in the Brazilian networks. With that, we put together a tutorial to help our members to solve problems. If you get a cert.br email and you are not quite sure about what's happening at your network, if you might be suffering any sort of abuse or attack, watch our videos. We got each one of the incidents, we tape them, so you can get more information about that area and solve it. Internet works based on each and everyone's collaboration, so everyone can get the best result of our internet. We also invited a technician to talk about open tools and management of technical vulnerabilities with open source tools. So that was a great tutorial with the NP staff. and it was very, very interesting. SD1 was another workshop which we have organized and thinking about the future. First steps for developing a quantic computer science. Quantic computer science is not a matter to the future only. Rather, you are able to develop that on quantic computers. You can do that on open source and become an expert in this field. So you think it's a faraway future? Not quite. We can do quite a lot right now with the quantic computer science. Citizen in the network. So we tell our members about technical issues, behavioral questions. That's not so much for network managers, but rather to be deployed as a tool for network managers. Many of the calls that managers get, they may be solved simply by simple users measures, but users, they have to be trained and informed. If we raise users awareness, internet becomes great to everyone, and that will decrease the workload of network developers. Now we have videos on a vertical format which can be easily downloaded on your smartphones, and we also have translated videos to English and Spanish, if you like. We have over 116 videos to be downloaded. They are very short. They last 15 seconds when they throw a very fast and summarized information. Our goal is to educate and train users, and we want that to be fast and easy. Otherwise, people won't feel like learning. Each one of those brief videos, they come with an explanation, a comprehensive explanation about that topic. This is a way for teachers to become experts in the topic and then take that theme to their classrooms. And here I do not mean just academic teachers, but citizens who should have this sort of behavior and awareness since they are very small, as children are also our users in the web. And you, as an institution, may support projects, download the videos, and have your logo in each one of the videos. Please see that as an opportunity and embrace this idea. Right now, we have 506 supporters, but we hope we can have more people working with us. This is another program called Acelera Net. Accelerate Net. We started with some professional courses with a basic ISPs, backgrounds, including IPv6, routing, hardening, DNS. We also promoted a provider effective management called Connected Humanity. And also there is a certificate test. This is a test which is an opportunity not only to get a test, but also to get a certificate that will be a stamp of your level of knowledge. It's totally free of charge, and tomorrow we are going to have a certificate test during the BCOP event. Those who would like to take the certificate, just enroll yourselves. We had 4 ConnectNet workshops just this year. And as to novelties, tomorrow the BCOP Fórum. It's going to be the first edition, is a new project, and this is an opportunity to discuss about best operating practices. Our technical community has grown, and we are able to give our opinion about the development of best practices. So embrace and participate jointly at BCOP Forum. So together we may design guides, protocols, and documents for others to follow the best protocols. We want our community to be able to design jointly with NIC.br best practices and to design protocols and guides that will improve developers' life. Tomorrow, you are going to learn more about this BCOP. And last but not least, this is our planning for 2025 at NIC.br booth. You'll be able to get this calendar where we will be going and visiting. We are going to have some on-site groups with radio frequency, Wi-Fi 7. We are trying to have a workshop talking about management that will be in March. And with the BCOP regional IX, we would like to ask you, if you are from these sites, please try to communicate and disseminate that information. We do need your help. I wish you could help us to disclose this workshop. Sometimes we need a room or a auditorium to carry out the event. We also would like to have a place to celebrate. Anything you can do, anything you could help us in each one of those sites, send us an email, talk to us throughout the event, and that's it. We are counting on your help. Even those who would like to become a sponsor, you may be one, you may be a sponsor and choose the place where you'd rather be or get the whole package. That's it from my side. I thank you for your attention. My time is up. That's it. Thank you.
Obrigado, Eduardo. Alguma pergunta para o Eduardo? Ficou alguma dúvida? Lembrando que as apresentações já estão disponíveis no site, então esse calendário que o Eduardo mostrou aqui já está na apresentação dele, já está disponível para...
That's already available for further consultation. All presentations that we had yesterday and today, they will be saved. Thank you, Eduardo.
Na sequência, eu gostaria de convidar o Klaus.
I would like to invite Klaus, who will be our next speaker. Fun comparison of open source to BGP. You have the floor, Klaus. Hi there, good morning. It's great to be here and to share a bit of my experience with the BGP analysis. My company, I work for Telco Manager. I am ISP product manager. And we usually, as we are a software company in Brazil, we usually compare our technology to those already existing technologies. So I will share my experience working with Damon's BGP. During my PhD thesis, I needed to work on BGP as I developed deep analysis on BGP. At that time, we were able to extract 100 routes. Today, we have 1 million, if not more. And why should we select a BGP daemon? Here are some use cases where you'd like to have a BGP. You would like to have a BGP controller to change CDN traffic with peers, allowing prioritization for VIP customers. If you want to mitigate DDoS services or to allow customers to check local BGP throughout a looking glass, to remove P routers with a router reflector, or even a border router in an open source Linux routers or Intel. You may also raise a data fabric or a BGP analyzer, which is what my company usually does. Why did the BGP router start therapy? Well, this is a joke which makes sense in English and not so much in Portuguese anyway. Let's establish some set of criteria to understand the Diamond BGP. Here I have a number of criteria and I will cover just some of them.
Eu vou explicando, assim que eu vou em cada eu vou explicando qual é o critério.
What are the competition criteria? But before going into the criteria, who are the competitors? Here we have a total of 8 Diamond BGP. During my PhD thesis, Zebra was the only one available. And I will set a comparison table here. Bird, FR routing, Rusty BGP, Open BGPD, IBGP, illustration. So they are all listed here with their criteria, adoption and community. Which ones are most frequently used by the community? And last, performance and scalability. Let's see if we're going to have time to cover all of that. Quagga, or Zebra. Zebra, in fact, was developed in 1996, and in 2002, it was performed in Quagga, and in 2017 became FRR. Down here, you can see all the updates and the 96 contributions. In 2017, nobody else had collaborated because it has been through FRR, and this is a daemon which is no longer used. I mean, you still can, but it's not so popular anymore. FRR is the most popular nowadays. Here you see all the number of contributors, issues, stars. If you are going to run any codes, you know the number of contributors and their scope. The number of forks means how many people had made some sort of changes. If your license allows, you may even include that on your code. The issue here is the license, and the license is GNU 2.0. It's quite limited, and be careful whenever you are going to use it. That is limited commercially speaking.
Then Go BGP was developed in 2014 by Fujitsu, and also lots of contributors, not as much as the previous one, but still a lot of contribution in terms of codes. You see in the beginning a bit more, now not as much, but it's not stopped. BERT is a bit older, 1999. I wasn't able to use it in my thesis because it did not exist at the time. I couldn't find it. But BERT 2.0 was 2018. And here you see the number of contributors, much smaller. You see a much smaller community. Open BGP daemon, similar to BERT in terms of contribution. It's a bit newer. And the idea is to be super safe compared to the others. And then EXA-BGP, UK 2009, the uh, it is just for you to work with the routing. Holo routing is the most interesting project that I came across. It was developed by a Brazilian last year, and the idea is to replace or improve FRR. So it is quite ambitious. You have BGP, ISS, you have all the daemons inside, and the idea is to be, again, super safe, and it is all written in Rust, which is very interesting today. And then Rusty BGP. It was created in 2020, a bit later, but also with the idea of focusing on safety. It also has some things in Rust. And then the comparison, Quagga no longer exists, so it is FRR. And in terms of comparison, FRR is best in terms of adoption and community. Then go GGP and others. These are quite subjective numbers, to tell you the truth. Now, code flexibility, that will depend on the language that is being used. FRR is a mix of languages. Basically, 70% is C, but you have even Perl. Go BGP is not only Go BGP, 76% is, but you also have Python. Bird has 2% per, and then you can see the other complements. And the points that I have here is that 0.5, which is yellow, for a language balance that I think is reasonable and not so complex or old. Green would be for more modern implementations and more flexible ones. So I think holo routing, 100% Rust is the winner, and EXA-BGP. The others are a mix of language, so not 100%. What I mean here is that may pose a problem for those that want to work with a single language. Style also matters, and the highest score are for those that have a better style and are in green. Now, some of these daemons allow for daemons that are not only BGP. So the greens here are the ones that do that. The others are purely BGP. And also plugins are important, and also age. I decided it to be a criteria. You see, the oldest is Open BGP and daemon, and the newest holo routing, and flexibility in terms of API, RPC, and others. And then the final score, you, you see here, again, from 0 to 10. So in terms of code and flexibility, the winners are Go BGP and holo routing. Another BGP, again, being the point that links it all. Now, configuration and usability. FRR is super simple to use. We all know that. It's a Cisco culture. So very, very simple to use, user-friendly. Go BGP is not complicated. It's not as easy, but it's also very easy to use. And it allows for several type of uses. Bird, a bit more complicated. Open BGP as well. They got half a point. Exa BGP is Python. So many people know it. It's not really a problem. All of routing has a YAML structure, which is easy, and Rust BGP as well. And so the easiest to configure would be Go BGP, FRR, ExaBGP, and Open BGP. So these are the ones that have the highest points. In terms of configuration, holo routing is not as easy because it's newer, but Rusty BGP also is not very good. The best for sure is FRR. Documentation is perfect, and Go BGP. If you want to check if something is usable or not, you have to ask ChatGPT. If ChatGPT just starts to wander around, it's because you don't have enough documentation, or even Google. Yeah. So some tools, um, basically, FRR, GoBGP, and ExaBGP are the best. And also, I compared their command line interface. So these are the tools. ExaBCP does not have A2. It has to use through the interface. And then syntax, you have the ones that are easier, and which ones enable or allow for dynamic changes, which is very important. And again, ExaBGP, GoBGP, and FRR are the winners. Although others do have some things that are easier. For instance, the GoBGP, basically you don't have to restart. You can include neighbors without having to restart the daemon. So the scores, FRR and GoBGP have a 10. Now let's go to automation and API. Here, certainly the winners are FRR and GoBGP because again, they work with RPC. I also include holo routing and Rust BCP, but I think these are ones of the best. So anyway, whoever uses gRPC received a green, and ExaGCP also brought a point. So in automation, the winners are again FRR and GoBGP. And Open BGPD got a 0 because it doesn't show any. And now security and reliability, and some details connected to BGP connection. And here I'm not talking exactly about code security, but I think it's a bit mixed, but I think this is, whatever I thought was important. So RQPI support, this is very important. You see Open BGP, Go BGP, and FRR. MD5, almost all of them have support to that, except for ExaBGP. You see, ExaBGP is the worst in terms of security. You see that it loses almost everything. Then vulnerability, how the code itself is written, reliability, and attention. For example, ExaBGP has limited native security. You have to have some script level controls. So some things that I think that are not interesting at all. So again, the winners are GoBGP, FRR, and OpenBGP. So you see already a trend who the winners are going to be. Now, this is the worst of all. How can you assess those that are going to meet with the RFCs. Because as of November 24, I came across this presentation was is in English, and I apologize, but it's something that I prepared for NOG last year. So it was approved by NOCA, and then in November 24, around 150 RFCs say that they are directly focused on BGP. Now imagine you have to verify 150 RFCs if they are compliant or not. That's complicated. And if you think of relations to RFC as an MP, MPLS, or other things, this adds on, you get to 200, 300 more. So it's very difficult for you to compare apples and apples. So I'll try and pick some features. What I got: security enhancements, traffic engineering, convergence, monitoring, and automation. So this is my list. The list is the features of RFCs that I chose, perhaps the most modern ones, or the most relevant, for instance, uh, things that I believe are the most important to our environment, such as the BCG flow spec. But there are other things: route leak prevention, route optimization, so things that I thought would be interesting for us to compare. And on this comparison, you see that almost all of them support the two main columns, but not flow spec. So if you see BGP daemon will have problems with flow spec. Holo routing is just does not have it, but they probably are going to include it because they are advancing fast. And in the end, you can see that GNMI only in the newest ones. So in this aspect, Go BGP is the winner. And deployment, then we do have a problem here. Because what is most complicated here is the EXA-BGP. You see that everything that's Python-based, it's complicated because it's not a single code, it's a group of codes. So if you're going to implement something, it is easier if you don't go there. Despite the fact that I saw when I was going to analyze performance, which is the most interesting that we are going to see now, that's another, I'm sorry, before that, this is an interesting fact that also contributed to BGP4. But anyway, let's go to performance, which is, I think, the most interesting thing. I created this setup. I used a machine with 24 cores, 25 256 giga of runs. Then I had inserted 5 million routes, and I created containers with Dockers with each one of these. And then I created these daemons in my machine. I did not use Data Hub, right? I used the source code. So unfortunately, I had to compile everything. I wanted to do it all. Some were easier, others more complicated, some worked or not, but the initial footprint is what I had. This is what I had best. But you see that EXA-BGP starts very low, and I thought it was going to be better because of Python, but no. But anyway, let's talk about performance. So what did I do? So 5 million in the route, then I shut down the interface, BGP, sorry, and then the Docker, I had it stopped without connecting to BGP or trying to connect to BGP because it was set up with a label and waiting for me to activate. And then when I activated, I was going to say what it recovered in terms of memory and etc. And there is something interesting here. FRR in the beginning You see, it takes about 1.5 minutes to be able to receive the 5 million routes, process them, and keep them in memory. The throughput is very high, about 12 million bytes per second, and it lasts 5 seconds, and you get to 5 giga memories. Go BGP, similar, but in terms of memory consumption, but the CPU is much smaller, so it consumes less and use a lot of processing. Here, it's 1.5 core, 2 core. Go BGP uses the cores of the machine in a more efficiently well. And CPU time, you see, is basically uh, uh, you have perhaps other processes there, but anyway, it is a lot faster than the other, about 30 seconds, 20 seconds. Rusty BGP has a bug, and I found out because I was going to test it and I was going to shut down and the Docker, and there is a flood of connections. It desperately tries to connect it. It sends packages every some milliseconds. And even without the BGP connection, it continues trying. So this is something that I found at Rusty. Perhaps it was a wrong setup, but I don't think that it should do that. Imagine you connect, the Rust BGP and you have the flood to the client all the time. So I shut down, and then when I reestablish, when you see the bottom chart, this is high because I shut down only one side, right? I shut down one side, then you have this desperate flood trying to connect, and here it drops because it's the type of negotiation of the PGP, which is about 20 seconds to try and switch routes. I observed that in almost all daemons. Then the CPU is quite constant, consuming more cores with the time of the Go BGP. Bird was very fast. I was quite surprised, or perhaps, in doubt whether it was working. But I did check, and it had the 5 million routes. So I was quite impressed with Bird's performance. Holo, I wasn't able to do that. I tried it all until last night, 11:30, and I could not make it work. Probably it's something that I failed in the setup. Uh, I will have to see what happens. OpenBGP is similar to Bird, quite fast, and consumes less memory. And Bird also consumes less, just 1 giga and something compared to the others. And the numbers also, in terms of core, just one and very fast. And the table of the OpenBGP did have the 5 million routes, and ExaBGP was a problem. When I had the 5 million routes, the first chart on top, it took all this time, more than a minute. And this, see, the scale is different. First, Python just using 1 core. This is, you know, uh, mode processing in Python is bad. We talked about that a few days ago. And then here you see that the variation was about 1. And when I went to take a look again, the band is here, see? So you see this memory going up, and I said, this is going to explode. I'm going to do something else. I'm going to have some water. So when I came back, it already ended. So I had to estimate the time, thinking of the line about 200 megabytes a minute. So they got to 2.5 giga in memory. So I imagine about 13 minutes. So a lot slower than the others. So in terms of performance and scalability, this is the score. I had some question marks because I think that they need still some uh, investigation, but it was quite interesting. So the final results, without performance, GoBGP was the winner, and with performance, GoBGP was the winner. But the difference to FRR is very small. You see that the numbers are very, very close. So what? Well, that will depend on your use case. XBGP is important if you have Python knowledge, if you have lots of Python projects, but it is the problem that you cannot receive the flow out. And when you're going to have, the flow spec, BERT and GoBGP are very fast. They don't use that much memory. And also support and community, FRR, GoBGP, and BERT are the canoers. gRPC support, if you want to work with that, GoBGP and Holo. And if your developers love C and you want C, go for BERT because it's C and it is fast. And OpenBGP daemon would be the second possibility because it has more features, and FRR because you have a mixture of languages. And if you want to build your own router, then FRR is best option because it's a huge community and lots of people adding to it. And for the future, Holo, I think it's the next big thing, and BERT is also a good solution. And that's it. I hope I have helped you to make your choices. And I'm sorry I went slightly past my time. Great, Klaus. Thank you. We do have time for one or two questions to Klaus, if you have any. Hi, Klaus. This is Douglas Fisher. I would like to make a comment in terms of your performance analysis. I'll come closer to the mic. I'm sorry. So a comment, there is a performance analysis of the end of 21 of a guy called Justin Trick, if I'm not mistaken. And he compared all performance. His analysis is quite impressive. And just wanted to mention, well, thank you. I wanted to do my own. Well, you didn't have Holo at the time, exactly. And the question is the analysis. My understanding of XBGP is that sometimes we have to do things that are wrong, if you consider that. So FRR won't even let you do that. The only one that lets you break the internet is XBGP. I should have said that. I agree with you 100%. Yeah, because it's similar to FRR and BERT. BERT perhaps will let you do some things. You can, but then you have to change the test. Holo has tests to all compliances, and then you do have this problem. So, but you can. EXA lets you do whatever you want, even wrong things. It's true. And I don't know if the other languages have something that. Holo is very secure in terms of that because it won't let you do that. So if you do something different, you are going to have an error. So you have to change the test. It is more complicated. But the oldest, they have not as many tests. So BERT, you can have changes. GoBGP, you also have tests. You have to know which ones you want to change. Otherwise, you're not going to do that. But XBGP, you're right. No tests. Python, you can do whatever you want. That's a very good comment, by the way. I don't know if it reflects your reality. But although XBGP is slow and with low performance, the scenario is basically to inject flow spec. It's not a million routes. Yeah, the thing is, if you want to have an intelligent injection, Well, it's just one flow spec, it's okay. But if you want to create routing tables and make changes based on the routing table, then Excel loses itself. Then Bird is better. Yeah, especially because you have the mode threading of Python. Yes. And also because it takes a long time for updates. Whenever you have a change, you want to see that. So it's not as easy. Okay. Yes, makes sense. Thank you. Thank you. I loved your comment. This is Pedro. I have two comments. The first about the routes that you injected. I think this is not what we see in full housing, really, especially because you're not considering IPv6. So perhaps one of them is not with the IPv6 well implemented, then it will consume more memory. And I would add another column, perhaps for a future presentation, comparing which one is more to be part of the IX infrastructure, where you need features, for instance, changing AS path and others. Well, about your comment, what you said in the beginning, the tests, I chose 5 million, all bus 24. I had several injections before, but I just got to a reasonable one when I worked to 5 million in bus 24. I thought of having different ports, but I had to simplify it, otherwise I couldn't finish. But I will do what you suggested. Thank you. This is Julio from NIC.br. Perhaps for a next step, I don't know what you're considering, but for the world of Internet exchange, performance is very interesting, perhaps decreasing the number of routes and increasing the number of labels, because then you're going to have an impact on memory that is quite significant. I, in the beginning, tried several paths. Instead of 5 million routes, I thought 5 million paths. So 1 million routes in the end of the day, directed, because for you to select from one to the other, you have just, one detail to be analyzed. So if you have 300 paths, which one chooses first? I wasn't able to do that in my test, but I want to do that. Thank you. This is Jenner Casatelli. An important test is also the injection of routes. Douglas said that except BGP, and that's a side comment, won't let you do wrong. It was made for you to do wrong. So if you're going to say all the documentation, all the development, it's almost written there. We are here for you to fuck up. That's what it is. And this is very important, especially when you are generating rules, flow spec, for instance. How many flow spec rules can they take? Because you don't generate many unicast rules, but can you generate 100 rules, 500 rules per second? So for your test, for you to come back next year, I think that's great. I'm going to do this test. That's very important. How many directions we can have? Yes, especially, if you want to mitigate routers, that's very important. Very good, very nice. Klaus, thank you so much for your presentation. Let's have a hand.
Na sequência agora, gostaria de convidar o Danilo Martins da
Next, Danilo Martins from Ed1, who will address improving observation in telemetry using G. You have the floor.
Olá, vocês estão me ouvindo? Sim? Bom dia a todos, muito obrigado por estarem aqui presentes. Agradeço ao pessoal que está presente.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you so much for your presence here and those following us remotely. Today, I'm talking about telemetry using GNMI and Prometheus. What is telemetry and what are concepts behind telemetry? Telemetry is a very broad concept. Telemetry doesn't just mean a real-time lecture, but any protocol which is able to collect information and take that to a central hub. In telemetry on network, we are emphasizing real-time data collection. Our device is able to generate information, send it to a central hub in real time, and to process it in such a way that we may process it throughout panels or external modifications. Telemetry is broadly used in the agribusiness, aeronautics, race cars. We have a protocol 9232, which is a very important material as it allows to understand the importance of telemetry, how it works. What are the advantages? Compliance of SLA and event tracking. If I'm generating data from an equipment, so these are the events that take place, and I may guarantee network reliability. How should I migrate from my SMP, which collects my whole information, to another one that will be able to generate the information, as I will do configurations, tests, and so on? One of the advantages is the gRPC. So we are using TCP, and instead of the SMP, we have a guarantee that if a certain information is lost, we are going to have some experience. You cannot send a request. You have a subscription and a certain metric of your equipment, and the equipment will generate information. So you no longer use the time and then use the telemetry collection time. Not all devices are compatible. But how can we implement telemetry in our network?
Que nós vamos utilizar para ser capaz de fazer desde a recepção da informação até
since the receiving of the information is storage and visualization. We have collector, storage, and visualization. This is the way as we choose a stack. We do need targets, and we do need a program which is able to connect to our equipment, and later on the collection and data process.
Vou mostrar pouco depois para vocês que nem sempre o
Not
dado
always
no formato perfeito que você quer
the data we get is in the proper format for applications, for a client or a dashboard. And we also need to store that on a database and later visualizations. That not necessarily a Grafana. It can be a second application which is collecting data. It can be even machine learning, AI, or to a ticket. I have chosen the GNMIC stack, which uses RPC. RPC, remote procedure, is a software protocol. Google got RPC and created Google Remote Procedure Call, which is a package that will improve it. And with that, GNME or GNPC Network Management Interface. It was first a Nokia project, but then it became a project of OpenConfig, which is a client to use this protocol for data collection.
O Prometheus ele é sistema de monitoramento e alerta também, mas também é um banco de dados que é capaz de armazenar
métricas. This is a database which is able to store metrics. Our collector will collect metrics which will be sent to our database with the Grafana visualizations.
Isso aqui é uma representação visual da nossa stack, então a gente tem nossos devices, nesse caso eu estou utilizando o Cisco. Tem o GNMC, que ele pode ser
deployado. We have a GNMC, which may be a single or cluster using Cisco. We are using as a storage visualization with Grafana. First step, configurations.
Inicialmente, a gente tem que habilitar gRPC no nosso equipamento. Vale lembrar que nem todas as versões e nem todos os equipamentos são compatíveis com o gRPC.
Not all equipments are compatible with the gRPC.
Acho que não existe cenário que você seja capaz de simplesmente largar.
There is not one scenario to adopt telemetry. So we check if the equipment is compatible. Once it's compatible, we skill gRPC and port in policy if used. I have two config systems, Juniper and Cisco. Juniper System Extension Service Request Response gRPC.
Nesse caso da apresentação, como a gente está utilizando laboratórios, não vou abordar tanto a parte de SSL, mas quando for colocar em produção, recomendo.
While in production, I recommend always that you save some space for security. And as Cisco gRPC, you may make able port SSL max sessions.
Uma vez que a gente habilita o gRPC, vamos utilizar o GNMC. O GNMC pode ser instalado
GNMC may be installed directly at Linux or within a lab, and also may be used with Docker or a Docker Compose for any additional structure which you would like to complement. Let's test that out. And the first important test to be conducted is capabilities, but be careful to expose that without users. Let's use environmental variability or try to capabilities will bring some packages. What are the packages? A set of models where our equipment may undergo subscriptions. They are called young models. And later on, we are going to have a talk just about young. Young aims to standardize what is able to be compatible with any vendor, where we'll be able to test if yes, our equipment is able to answer to gRPC, and what are the best ways that our equipment may follow for an eventual subscription in the interface. And here composed doc element, each one is a service of a Docker Compose. Here we have a Prometheus, which is a database, the Prometheus, I'm sorry, which is a database.
Dentro dessa versão do Prometheus, eu estou especificando só a
Within
versão.
the Prometheus, I'm specifying just that version.
Não tem nenhuma configuração muito avançada.
There is no advanced config, no scrapper config. So I am uploading my GNMIC client.
E também Grafana no final para visualização.
and a
Vamos lá?
Grafana for
Configurando
visualization.
nosso device, baixamos o
So we
GNMC,
config
já sabemos
our
o que precisamos
device,
fazer.
we
Agora é hora de
test
criar
it,
a nossa
we
parte de
know what
configuração.
to do.
Testando capabilities, a gente
So
viu que
by
nosso
testing
equipamento é capaz de fazer
capabilities, we
e
know
nosso
what
equipamento é capaz de
our
responder.
equipment
Porém, agora
is
a gente
able
precisa
to
montar
do
arquivo
and
de
answer.
configuração.
However, we have to set up a config
Esse
file,
arquivo
which would be
gnmc.yaml file. Esse arquivo
GNMC,
aqui vai conter toda a
which
configuração,
will have the
os
whole
caminhos que a gente utiliza para
configurations,
informação,
all
para
the
onde a gente
ways
vai enviar
where we are
informação e os
collecting
dados que a gente
information
precisa para acesso.
and data
Você
for
também pode
SEF.
utilizar, caso não for utilizar um Docker, utilizar
If you
direto
don't
no
use
espaço,
a
apenas rodar esse comando
Docker,
diretamente.
you may just run that
subscribe,
command
mais ou menos config,
directly,
e o nome do seu
subscriber plus or less config and the name
Beleza.
of your
Então, o que
file.
a gente precisa para entender a estrutura do arquivo que é compatível com o GNMC? O arquivo
What
do
is
GNMC é
compatible
composto por
to the
5 partes,
GNMIC
sendo que
file
actions
that
e
is
processors
made
são
by
meio que
5
opcionais, mas
parts?
importantes de
Actions
saber.
and process, they are
Onde o
optional,
target a gente define quais são os devices
where
que a
the
gente vai passar por
target
letra,
is defined
senhas,
by the
acessos, retries,
devices
se for necessário.
without
A gente
access
coloca
retrial
subscriptions
if
interligadas aos
necessary,
targets,
subscriptions intertwined
ou
to
os dados que
targets,
nós vamos coletar.
where we define the
Sensores, as
ways,
métricas,
the sensors, the metrics. We may have multiple PFs, multiple targets,
e
also
principalmente,
the
importante dizer,
outputs
são os modes.
and the
Quando a gente está
modes.
falando de GNMI, nós temos
Anytime we
três
talk about
formas, três comandos
GNMI,
principais.
we
Que é
have
get,
three
set e
main
subscription.
commands.
O get permite com que a gente colete
Get
informação
allows
uma
to
vez,
connect
como se fosse um single
information
point. O
one
set
single
permite criar
time,
configurações e enviar
and
informação para
set
esse
allows to
equipamento.
set
E
up
o subscription,
configurations
que
to the
talvez seja o
equipment.
tópico mais
And
importante, permite
subscription,
você
which
fazer
may
uma
be the most
subscrição
interesting
de um
topic,
determinado
allows a
sensor ou
subscription of
informação
a
do seu
certain
equipamento,
sensor
na qual o seu equipamento
of
passa a mandar o
an
dado e enviar para
equipment
a
information
ferramenta.
that will show that
Então,
information.
uma vez que a gente definiu os targets e subscriptions, o output, a gente precisa também definir
Target
processos. Eu vou mostrar um
subscriptions
pouquinho
and
deles, cada
outputs. We
deles, o
have
que
to
que a gente
define
coloca,
the
mas é
process,
importante
each
definir
one
os
of
processos,
them,
porque são os
but we have
processors
to
que serão
define the
capazes
processors.
de alterar as
Processors
métricas
will
para
be
elas ficarem
able to
visíveis.
alter
Vou
the
mostrar alguns exemplos
metrics
para vocês
so
do
they
porquê
may
o processo é
become
importante.
visible.
E por fim, dentro da
And
própria
finally,
plataforma, a gente pode
within
fazer
the
aços.
platform,
A ideia
we
do
may
ato
have
é,
some
quando um evento for
actions.
detectado em real
And
time,
once an
nós
event
podemos tomar uma
is
ação, como,
detected
por
on
exemplo, fazer
real
um
time
post,
and it takes
soltar um
place,
comando no
we
equipamento e mandar um
may
arquivo.
perform an
Um
action
determinada
like
operação
a
aconteceu, você
post,
pode fazer engenharia de
or
tráfego,
you
você pode enviar um
may
aporte,
carry
você
out
pode
a
enviar uma
traffic
notificação.
engineering,
E,
you may
indo
open
por
a
partes, a
new
gente começa por
portal.
target e subscription.
And let's
Dentro da parte de
start
target,
from
imagina que você cria
targets
um
and
arquivo YAML.
subscriptions.
Então,
Let's
coloca o meu arquivo
suppose
YAML. Dentro da parte do
this
target,
is
eu
a
especifico quais devices eu quero colocar
YAML
em grupo.
file.
Nesse caso, eu coloquei apenas um grupo que eu chamo
In
de
this
Cisco
case,
iOS
YAML
X0
file.
ou
In this
device.
case, I
Mas eu
have
poderia
just
ter
one
vários
device,
grupos, então, por exemplo, eu
Cisco
posso ter
iOS
meus equipamentos borda,
XR. So I may have
equipamentos
different
BNG,
equipments,
equipamentos
BNG,
XPTO. Então, eu posso ter vários grupos de
XPTO,
equipamentos.
you name
E dentro
it.
desses grupos de equipamentos, eu
Different
tenho um ou mais
sets of
devices. Uma
equipments
das
with
vantagens do
one or
modelo
more
da
devices.
utilização do gRPC com o modelo
The
Young
advantage
é que a
of
gente
using
pode usar o mesmo
gRPC
path,
with the
aquele
Young
mesmo path,
model,
por
we
exemplo, com
are able to
interfaces de
use
classe
the
com
same
outros vendors que eles devem ser compatíveis também.
PAF
Teoricamente deveriam ser.
with the same path
Então, podemos especificar o target e
interface,
dentro do target
interface
a
of
gente pode
other
colocar
vendors,
subscriptions.
which are
Essas subscriptions
compatible
serão os
as well.
sensores e a
We
forma que a gente
may
vai coletar essa
specify
informação. Então, defini os meus
targets, and
targets,
within the
começo a
targets,
definir meus
the
subscriptions. Eu posso ter
subscriptions.
múltiplos
We
subscriptions,
may have
múltiplos
multiple
subscriptions conectados a múltiplos
subscriptions
targets, como um mesh.
intertwined
Nesse
to
caso, eu estou
multiple
criando
targets,
um
like a
subscription para o meu
mesh.
Cisco iOS.
Then I will have
Esse
a
sandbox é
subscription for a
do
Cisco
.NET lá do
iOS.
Cisco, que é
This
aberto
is
para
a
quem quiser testar.
sandbox from
O path que eu
Cisco,
estou
open
coletando, interface
source,
interface,
and
então,
the collected
o
PF
main model ele vem no
interface
formato de árvore, você tem paths e subpaths,
that
esses subpaths
is
trazem
on
informações.
a tree model.
Então, toda vez que houver uma mudança no path ou no
And any
subpath
time
desse
that there
model,
is a change on a
ele vai gerar
path
informação
or
para
a
o meu GNMC,
subpath,
porque eu
that
especifiquei qual
will
state.
drive
O modo
an
state,
information to
implica que
my
toda vez que um determinado
GNMIC
contador ou um
because
determinado
I
state
had
event ocorre,
specified a
ele vai
string
enviar essa
mode.
informação. Ou
Anytime
seja,
that I
meu
have a
equipamento está
string
gerando dado para
mode,
mim. Eu não
my
estou lá fazendo um
equipment
book
will
request a cada 5
generate
minutos.
information
E
and
por
not
fim, eu
a
posso
book
especificar dentro também os
request
outputs
every
de cada
5
arquivo salvo.
minutes. And I may also
Vou passar essa
specify
parte de
the
output e mostrar um
outputs.
exemplo de coleta.
to be saved. With the same document, I'm collecting on a specific interface. That is the state interface. Interface state, the output is giant, and here we can see which sensors are being managed. I am the status admin, and each one of those status will generate an RPC response that will be sent to my GNMIC, and later on I may use that for something else. Here an output example with Prometheus. Prometheus has a faster response to queries. The database that you use for telemetry, it's up to you. It's according to your level of familiarity to the technology. Within output, I have a post on the writing mode. Anytime that my sensor detects it, or if I have a sample mode, the information will be sent to throughout the processor. But data is not well reading, so I have the same interface with the status down, and then the same interface with the status up. If I'm not able to read, it's down. Once I read it, it's up. And the later on metric is similar, same interface with the same status. But that information is not widely used and cannot be easily read. However, we are able to use event processors, which allow us to transform an event message that will be written to output. Therefore, we may change tags into values. We may erase an information which is not useful to our application. And here two transformation examples. Delete
deletar algumas tags que eu já não preciso mais. É claro que os processors são executados sequencialmente, a gente pode ter N processadores.
So we may have several processors. We change the data in the way we prefer. We may also aggregate data and similarly save on a database. To each one of them, we may have target, subscriptions, output, and processors. We may have multiple processors to an output, and similarly, we may have multiple processors to collect a output. I don't want my suite to carry BGP information because the PF will not be available into the equipment, and for that, subscriptions or processors may be used in accordance to the data that I would like to collect. This is an already processed data with the name of the tag. Then I have the description name and I change the name to numbers. A portal which is admin down and operational down, I want to have that as -1. But if just one of the status is with interference, then that can be 0. From the processors or the information we have, we are able to manipulate that data and show it according to our needs.
Uma vez que a gente fez todo o processo, a gente está lá coletando informação, a informação já está sendo enviada ao banco.
Information is being collected and sent. we have to create actions. Actions are processors that will enable the execution of a certain action when an event is triggered. If I change my port state twice within 60 seconds and I want to send a post somewhere, action is not limited to posts, neither to command sending. We may send commands, we may issue a post, we may trigger other alarms or customized scripts. For developers, we may have scripts in Golang.
Beleza. Então, para concluir, uma vez que a gente viu todo o decorrer da plataforma, implementar telemetria não é uma tarefa fácil. Uma migração de telemetria não é algo que você consegue fazer.
Telemetry implementation is not an easy stuff. You cannot do it overnight. You have to respect our network and equipment needs. In telemetry, we are talking about real-time monitoring, less CPU intensive and granularity, where we are able to optimize our memory and CPU. I guess you have seen some tools affecting the equipment. We are also able to personalize for our necessities, as there are values and metrics which don't need to be collected every 5 minutes, but only if there are changes. I may also reinforce my SLAs. On a flop event, we may use SNP trap, SNMP trap.
E também é importante entender que não dá para simplesmente pegar a sua
we
rede
cannot simply get the whole network, get telemetry, and remove everything. No, telemetry works better if you have other tools working jointly, such as Flow Tools, which is a tool for collection and for logs. The set of tools is responsible for that ideal use of tools, and that may be an advantage. Customers, they have to be pretty sure that once an event takes place, the network will be aware and the client notified. Well, I know that was a technical presentation, a bit shorter, he says, and don't miss visiting our booth. And if we don't have a chance to answer all your questions, come and talk to me. We can keep answering questions about telemetry. Thank you, Danilo.
Muito obrigado, Danilo. Alguma pergunta para o Danilo?
Any questions to Danilo?
Por favor, se apresente e faça a pergunta.
Please tell us your name and ask your question. Good morning. I am from National Itaipu. Itaipu, he says. Have you tried to compare support to Cisco network? Do you know each one allows support to Cisco netconf versus GNMIC? Did you get the question?
Bem, eu cheguei a fazer algumas comparações em cima de NET.
Yes, I have compared netconf with GNMI. I prefer GNMI for data collection as it is faster because the subscription was pre-configured and you don't have to wait. As we have a number of different versions, some under legacy, my question was if RPC would have a more comprehensive coverage than netconf. Well, I cannot precise you that, but overall, I would say no.
Emerson da Gere.
I am Emerson from Jerry.
Que dá para a gente fazer pré-processing e coisas do tipo, até mesmo inserir.
You told us that we can use that for processes and for some other script actions. Is it possible to split or to really understand which informations or equipments I may collect for a pre-process? It was not quite clear if the number of targets is related or not. Is it possible to make a division?
Tem sim. Uma das ideias.
Yes, that's quite possible.
Tem sim. Uma das ideias do GNMC é a capilaridade.
GNMIC has a high level of capillarity, working with multi-targets, multi-subscriptions. Then I can establish which ones may be used for a certain database according to your application needs or your own desire. That can be totally customized. Thank you, Danilo. Big round of applause to Danilo.
Pessoal, com isso finalizamos a nossa primeira parte do segundo dia do
So we are just about to close our first morning session. Now it's coffee break, and please be back at 11.
Boa tarde, pessoal. Bom dia ainda, não? Estamos retornando agora do café.
So we are back from coffee.
A próxima atividade
So our next panel is going to talk about Anatel's official test channel. And I'd like to invite our moderator, Moreiras from NIC.br, and the other panelists, Andrei from Anatel, Holger from NIC.br, João Henrique from Anatel, Maria Elisa from Conexis, and Wagner Meyer from Abrint. Please do take your seats.
Bom dia, gente.
Well, good morning, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank the panelists, Andrei, Holger, João, Maria, and Maya, for being here. So this panel is going to talk about the official test channel of Anatel, the tool to make sure that consumer rights are being protected. In principle, you're talking about the right in break of contract without loyalty penalties. But the idea is to understand from the panel if this is what it is, if there is anything else, if there are any concerns. So the thing is, back in 2014, we had Resolution 632 of Anatel that set forth the general rules for consumer rights in telecommunication services. In particular, we are interested in STM, which is a telecommunications service that supports almost the whole internet services that we have today. So in my homework, and Anatel people can correct me if I'm wrong later on, this resolution established the basic rights of consumers. It already talked about quality, but it did not establish any defined criteria or control mechanisms for that. But then in Resolution 717 of 2019, quality indicators were established. And then we had the support entity to assess quality, ESAC, that exists today. And more recently, in 2023, we had Resolution 765 that updated the rules about consumer rights. And this Resolution 765 talks about the possibility of contract breach without or termination of contract without payment of fines, and it also talks about a assessment of quality that is specific for a specific consumer. And most recently, you probably saw that in the press, we had news of a partnership, an agreement established between NIC.br and Anatel to develop this quality metric. So, in a more detailed introduction, this is what I mean to do. This is what we are going to talk about in the panel. So I'm going to start with Anatel representative João to try and explain with a bit more detail what this metric is all about, what the agreement is all about, why it is important. So, João, if you could introduce the topic under the lens of the communications regulator, I would really appreciate that. Thank you. Let me remove my headset because then it's going to be easier. Yes, it's better not to have the return. Okay, good morning. First of all, I'd like to thank the invitation. We, as a regulatory agency, enjoy the opportunity of listening and getting to know better the providers. I'm going to use, the old name in Brazil, which we called provedores, which are service providers for broadband, that is, internet providers. Well, when I started in data communication, that's what I called them. But anyway, it's a very good opportunity to get to know people and to listen to what people have to say. So just in a background of the topic, in 2019, there was a change of the RGC, which is the General Regulation for Consumers of Telecom Services. And then what happened is that there was then the possibility of introducing a tool for consumers to be able to verify connection speeds. So again, the popular term is speed, but you talk about throughput, um, uh, bandwidth capacity, and etc. Anyway, based on the RGC and this possibility of consumers being able to have an official tool to learn about the service that was being provided to them, Anatal started to work on a project with external consultants that provided a very thorough analysis to the agency. Perhaps many of you have participated in the process. We had, different fora. I think a Brit was with us. We interviewed players, consumers. We had an international benchmark of how other countries address the issue. So the whole result of this consulting process was the conclusion that we should develop a tool for consumers to measure the speed. This is not a data collection tool for the assessment of general quality. This is performed by Exate today. This is a tool for consumers. So anyway, that was the output of the consulting work. And then the agency started to seek for a partner to develop the tool. And at least in my opinion, the choice could not be more fortunate. Choosing NIC as a partner was very right, not only because it's huge technical experience, but also for the credibility that NIC has in the area. I'm going to use, a term that is NIC's credibility and impartiality before providers, especially smaller providers, is huge. So I think it was a very happy choice. But anyway, it took some time because of bureaucracy to sign the agreement. So the definition, the decision dates way back, but it took some time for us to finally sign the technical cooperation agreement between Anatel and NIC. And, 3 months ago, well, past the actual signing, it is time for us, to start working. And NIC asked then us, because the news hit the press, the cooperation agreement, the tool. Nick invited us to come to this event to give you some color on what is happening and even perhaps clarify some things. I think even, the name of the panel is referring to just one of the sides of the tool. So Nick invited us to tell you about at what stage we are in the deployment, what the timing is, and this is what we want to tell you. The definitions, technical definitions of how it will be, when it will be, still are going through a work group uh, that is going to have the participation of providers themselves. So today, we do not have a final definition. This is what is going to measure, this is not going to measure. We are just clarifying today the objectives of the tool and what kind of timing we are expecting and what the process is going to be like until it reaches the consumers. So I think that is the intro that I can give you. If I can add to that, please. Andre, I'm going to ask you, and of course you can add, but João mentioned a point that I think is one of the main questions, perhaps, that we hear around when we talk about this agreement. He said that ESAC, which is the current official measurer, Brazil broadband, is a measure that is not individual. So now it is a new measure, different from a ZAC. It's not going to replace it. It's different things. So before you add to what he said, I would like you also to include this information. We are talking about different things. ESAC is one thing, and this new meter is another thing. Yes, and I'll try to explain how the governance of this work, of this project works based on the structure that we have in the agency. As well mentioned, you have a regulation on consumer rights, and in its newest version says that users should have a tool to measure if the speed hired is what they are getting. Uh, and if not, they can go to a contract termination without any penalty. Now, this is a point, but then you have to think how you're going to implement the project. You have the method, you have the regulation, you have the regulation of quality. So you're talking about two different things that are going to converge. When you talk about quality inside Anatel, we have a whole system of collection of lots of indicators: internet performance, user perception, amount of complaints, and this set of indicators is, what contributes or gives the agency a view on quality. The regulations on quality says that smaller companies should necessarily be part of this collection and assessment process. But there is also possibility that they can be part of the process, making their data available and therefore have their quality compared to larger providers. So what's the incentive there? The regulation says that you can have a quality seal, as you have with wood when you're talking about energy efficiency, etc. But consumers visually can know what kind of quality you have with providers, quality A, B, C. So it is an approach very much directed to incentives. So you are leaving that rationale of command and control. If you do wrong, you are sued. No, you're just, incentivizing the market to do better. So all the set of data collection, assessment, posting, they are at a level that goes from the federal side to each city, and this is a group that is responsible for that, that we call GT call. So we work together, so to speak, because one thing is to determine that you're going to measure. And then based on a result, you're going to have more or less customer loyalty. But how you're going to measure, what rules and etc. have to be based on rules that are very well defined. And that's what the GT code does. Along the indicators, they say what they're going to measure, how often, under which conditions. And so we have a whole manual that tells us how the process has to be followed. And here it's the same thing. The model that inspired the tool came from a German model in a tool that works as we want it to work, but that we have to translate to our reality. So, for instance, I know that a concern is that most people at home are going to access their internet on the cell phone, not cable, which is different from Germany. And then you can be farther away from the Wi-Fi. You can have other equipment connected at the same time, which somehow can impair performance. So you have a series of practical, concrete aspects that have to be taken into consideration when you are designing your rules. And then it is important to work together, and that's what we are going to do as of January. So DT call plus a deployment group that we already had in the agency. And the idea is to have a joint meeting and therefore carry out more technical discussions about how to take all these conditions into consideration. And that's because, as I mentioned in the beginning, GT Call is formed by companies that are already members of the project and others not. Uh, and the regulation of consumers is for all the companies. So we have to think of this larger group of companies as of the discussion. So as of January, this is what we want to do, to put the two groups together so that they can talk and then technically discuss the rules to indeed implement the
Deixa eu ver se
tools for
eu consegui
consumers.
entender aqui, tentar
Okay, let
resumir um
me see
pouquinho.
if I
Então,
understood
vamos lá.
it and I'll try to summarize.
Houve aquela resolução
So,
717 em
you had the
2019 que
resolution
estabeleceu o
717 in
RQual, Regulamento de
2019,
Qualidade, e
that
aí a partir
established
daí
the
foi
quality
estabelecido que é
assessment
obrigatório para as grandes
that
e
is
opcional para
mandatory
as,
for larger
as pequenas.
providers
E daí, a
and
partir daí, foi
optional for
estabelecido
smaller
um grupo de
providers.
trabalho, e
And
nesse
then
grupo de
you
trabalho
established a
é que se
work group,
construíram as
and
regras
in
mais
this work
específicas
group, you
para a
developed
medição.
the
E
more
essa medição é
specific
aquela que a
rules
gente
for
está acostumado, que
measurement.
existe hoje,
And
e ela não é
measurement
uma
is
medição
what
individual,
we
mas é
have
uma
today,
medição
and
por
it's not
prestadora e que também
individual,
dá
it
dados
is
para a
by
Anatel
provider
estatísticos
that
para o
also provides
município
data to
e
Anatel by
outros.
city and other. Not only this one, but also this one. We have a whole set of indicators, latency, service time, technical visits, speed. So a series of indicators. This is a tool that collects information, and then it is informational, but it is another initiative. It's not based on the results of the tool that we have today that we are going to uh,
Exato. E daí
use
vem isso.
with consumers. The tool for consumers is going to be developed with NIC. But our knowledge, of course, is going to add to that. So what motivated this is the new resolution that changed our SGC 765, and then the same process that you had before for quality indicators, you are going to work with GT call, but now with a broader participation that is adding smaller providers because that's for them as well. A more specific model to be created, but you already have as reference the German model that you mentioned. Yes. In terms of model and the idea, the concept, but not the execution, because our realities are different. And this is what I said. So we have a different reality. So you have the idea, but we have to adapt to our reality. And that's why it's so important to have the industry working with us. Very well. And then you mentioned the use of the internet in mobile devices, on Wi-Fi, and this type of things that are challenges and differences compared to the German reference model. Yes. It's just, these are examples of possibilities. We still don't have anything, written in stone. This is a process to start now. But these are challenges that come to mind when we start thinking how this tool would work. It's not only cable, it can be measured by cell phones. So there are some challenges that have to be taken into consideration so that we have the best suitable technical result. Very well then. So I'm going to ask Holger from NIC.br that works with quality measurements. And I would like you to give the perspective of NIC.br, how the agreement started, what you have in mind, what kind of challenges do you expect for this tool, and what is being tried, even if it's still pending definitions that will come from the discussions of the group. Good morning, everyone. Well, Nick, for some time ago, I think in 23, perhaps even the end of 22, started to assess the feasibility for the development of this tool. And as it was mentioned, because of the need of Brazil advancing methodology and possibilities of measurement. So the idea was to have an effective tool that could be used and would work with the devices and the connections that we have in Brazilian homes. And then we started a study to check the technical feasibility. We mapped the scenario. We detected that it was possible. It's not an easy methodology. I can say more about that, but these are things that will help us take a proposal for the right forum, that is, where the discussions are going to be made. So there is a previous feasibility study and the knowledge to create the tool in the discussion groups that I think is the right place. And there are some technical aspects that have to be taken into consideration. The reference tool, the German reference tool, thinks about measurement of connections in a computer with cable connection. And we all know that with this, we have a guarantee of connectivity. But with measurement, we want to know what kind of broadband the provider is delivering, just to know if that was as agreed in contract. So the methodology has to be able to map different factors that we might have with the device or with the connection that may impair connection in such a way that it no longer represents the broadband delivered to the consumers. So I think that's the main point of the methodology. And there are several possibilities. First, we have to start with an assumption that at a certain situation, the connection may not be able to access broadband, the local conditions. So the tool has to detect the conditions and guide users what possibilities they have to make a more valid measurement, perhaps turning off other consumers that are consuming band at the same local network, checking whether you have a computer to check the connection and etc. So part of the methodology, and I think this is core in the proposal, is to educate users. And this is very important in this situation to be able to have a more accurate measurement of broadband. And it is also very important for users when they are consuming the internet, because then they will know what can impact the final connection. So that, I don't know, sometimes they are able to use a different router to think of the device that they are using, the points of access. So they may adjust the setup to have a better internet experience. And in the sense, this is very important for valid measurement, but it is also important because the tool becomes a partner of providers. And I think this is a step of the process that is very important. It is a consumer protection tool, but it is being launched with the objective of not being punishment, but rather education to make things work better for consumers, because that's what everybody wants, consumers, providers, and everyone involved.
And we have to highlight the second use of the tool, which will be very effective if the working group decides so. I will not go into details of the methodology, but yet we have to diagnose some constraints of Wi-Fi. And as to measurement tools that we have nowadays, such as CMED and Brazil Broadband, they require developing a whole program or modules for measurement program that will implement all the parameters to understand if that measurement has been affected or not. So an assessment is very important. Thank you for Anatel's perspective to be a tool, not a tool to punish, but rather a tool that will aid in terms of providers' quality and also educational aspects. And NIC.br is totally aligned to some other objectives that we have heard from Anatel's representatives. But on the other hand, we have providers sitting at an opposite side, and we have NIC.br staff over there. But now I'd like to hand over to Maria Lisa. Maria Lisa from Connexus. You have some experience in participating in the working group as well as in the prior tool development. What is your perspective? Do you really believe that a new tool will be necessary or not? If so, what are the main concerns that your company have? You represent large size connections. And by that I mean Vivo team. Am I right? You have the floor. Hi, good morning. I am Elisa. I am here representing this agency. It's a consortium, actually, that represents not only large players, but also some smaller players. I am a part of the working group, and this is a topic which has been broadly addressed by our group of experts due to a number of specificities, such as measurement of a speed that can be measured properly and effectively, take into account consumers in the center. The company will guarantee a certain level of speed until the consumer's router. But homes, they work with different devices connected, several people using at the same time. At my home, I have 2 children. I work remotely, and then my other son watching remote lessons, watching YouTube, and another one playing video games. So all this tech demand becomes a concern to our sector. If that tool is applied according to the German model, where they cable it to the client's router, then it might be that the speed loss or the latency loss will not be of great impact to companies. In my opinion, this is a tool which will be able to empower our consumers. However, we've better be careful with all these issues. Will that be really cabled? Will consumers be able to measure their connection similarly as they do with Brazil broadband? Several questions still to be answered, because if they measure that with their smartphone, there will be a difference or some sort of loss according to the type of device in use. Thank you. That's my 2 cents. Would you like to give any feedbacks?
Tudo propostas, né? Tem que ser debatido no dia qual.
They are just, you know, proposals,
Então, realmente, essas são questões importantes que a metodologia tem
but
que
very timely, and methodology has to be ready to answer to all these questions. But we should start from an assumption that it's a matter of building up a methodology which will require empiric measurement thanks to real experiments. And to address all these questions, we need valid statistics. And also we have to be able to detect any time a measurement is being affected. We have 2 sides, a technical aspect of the construction, which validates which is supported on validation, and also we will need validations to mitigate any additional concerns and that will validate our technical proposal in an effective way. Let me make one additional comment. In addition to all these worries and concerns, I also see a need to better educate our consumers. Consumers, they have to be more aware about the way as they can mitigate the use of the internet. We do not expect to get an answer to all challenges and everything else, because I suppose this is a long list to be solved in addition to some other aspects which are part of the process. And where are we in this timeline? We are all raising questions that should be solved technically, and the main gain is, and now that we have this partnership with the NIC.br, we just see as a win-win situation, thanks to all NIC.br's expertise, which will help us to address all these concerns on the way. And by the time we get to our users, they will not only have a timely tool that will help and empower them in that decision make, but also they will have in hands a tool that will help us to promote digital literacy, which is very important within this meaningful connectivity, which is, after all, our main goal. Maya is here today representing Abrint, and Abrint has a number of small-size providers. And in face of this recommendation or this scenario, what is your opinion? How do you see a need to have a measure to breach this loyalty aspect? What is your opinion about this kind of proposal to have a more educative measurement system? And what are the main concerns in your sector? Well, first of all, we believe this is a very important initiative and relevant to our sector. Today, there are some tools which we don't really know how they work and what are their measurement criteria. And in many cases, they are used in judicial lawsuits, which may be a concern to all of us, not delivering the expected broadband. Broadband delivery today is so different from what it was a few years ago. As today, we have a broad CDNs network, which does not get from internet, does not live from IP links. We have a number of connections. We have a number of IX, thanks to NIC.br, which ensures us to grant a more effective broadband. I don't want to generalize, but yet we know that over 60% of the whole traffic that users may get, they come from CDNs and from IXs and PPTs. So a user which is well placed and which is linked to CDNs or other PPTs, they don't face any broadband issues. That could be a fact 5 or 10 years ago, when small providers would work just with radios and interference would be an issue, and they would suffer with the final broadband delivery. But that's no longer a problem. We are no longer concerned with delivering the broadband, but having a good Wi-Fi connection at user's device. And why is that? For around 74% of all call supports to small providers are related to Wi-Fi and not band. Broadband is not a problem, but Wi-Fi is. And why is that? Because the device is far away, is not well configured, because there is a neighbor interference, or maybe because user's device is not able to cope with that band consumption. Therefore, regional providers, they have to double effort to tell users that the band is reaching them, but yet users don't feel it because they don't see broadband being in their devices. There are, in some cases, small providers, they end up investing high amounts to adapt to use a broadband and to provide broadband to their users.
Então, eu acho assim, hoje,
today, our absence of band delivered, as consumers say, is not really due to lack of band, but rather due to lack of Wi-Fi. Most devices nowadays, they use Wi-Fi and not wired connections.
Eu acho essa iniciativa da Anatel.
Anatel's initiative in partnership with the NIC.br is wonderful. I guess a meter like that represents a reliable tool which is managed with a great reliance, with great resilience, I mean, and Anatel should adopt Wi-Fi with some extra survival rate. It is under discussion to remove 100 gigahertz, but should we keep those 100 gigahertz, because those gigahertz, in my opinion, is just the future of our Wi-Fi. And if we remove those 100 gigabytes from Wi-Fi, today we are going to have meters with issues, consumers complaining, and removing a bit of the spectrum to offer one final mile to the users that can be of great concern within Anatel. There are those who advocate for removing that, but I don't agree. I think that other tools will be hindered if we don't have enough band. And what we are lacking today is band to be outputted. Otherwise, they will be confined on PPTs or CDNs present at small size and large size providers.
Nesse sentido, da gente ter Wi-Fi com sobrevida.
Our goal is to have some extra Wi-Fi with extra life, as our demands for broadband will keep on growing, and we should have additional Wi-Fi to put up with that. And moreover, the use of a meter, not to breach a contract. Abrint has over 2,000 associated companies member.
uma coisa aqui que não é 100% dos associados que pensam assim, mas
So not 100% of all our members, they share that feeling, but I should say that most of them, they are not so concerned about breaching their loyalty agreement. If there is a breach, fair enough, because it's just a matter of not being complying with the expected band or some breach of systems, and that's not their main concern. What they are more worried about is the bad use of the tool or not a proper use of the tool. And I guess it's up to the tool developers to proper do their homework and to better guide and share what are the tool constraints. So users will not use that to carry out a lawsuit against band providers. As if you would buy Bitcoins, wondering how rich you would be, and then he's not able to buy the Bitcoins, and then he's gonna, move a legal process to the Bitcoin provider because he was not able to buy it. Would be more or less the same if we did that in our field. That's why I say that that should be well documented and not just being understood as an absolute truth.
Vocês querem reagir? Bom, começando pela última fala.
Anything
acho que
else? Yes, sure.
90% alinhados.
I guess we are 90% aligned here one to another.
Essa ferramenta vai agregar muito.
I believe that this tool will add so much to our sector. It will be an added value behind its implementation. And we are not so much concerned about breaching loyalty. As consumers, they have their own rights. They can breach a contract anytime. And what can Anatel really expect from this tool?
Que a gente espera? Claro, tem
Well, we at Anatel, we emphasize consumers' right. Consumers, they are entitled to control, to monitor the performance of the broadband service, which is offered to consumers. And this double checking is a basic consumption relationship for any sort of product or service. Any consumer is entitled to check that out, to inspect if they are getting exactly what they have paid for, or if they are being fooled and not getting exactly what had been offered to them. This is a basic relationship, fair enough. But internet as a product is not a simple and a straightforward product to be easily inspected. We know how complex internet is, and there is no need to go into details about that. We all know what the main worries are, but we understand that there are complexities, but yet we have to face all the issues, and we have to assist our consumers and to set proper references for further contracts. And exactly due to complexity and to confidentiality that we are here discussing about this relationship, which is, after all, a basic consumption relationship, and it's up to consumers to double check if they are getting what they paid for, as I said. Germany is in the forefront. They started that. It's not something that NIC.br, Anatel, or Brazil is making up. No, not at all. Many other countries are adopting tools like that, consultancy tools. In Europe, not just Germany, but Italy, Croatia, Bulgaria,
a Tchequia, enfim,
Czech
e como
Republic,
asterisco a Inglaterra.
and
Asterisco a
the
Inglaterra,
UK,
porque apesar de não ser
in inverted commas. And why? Because in the UK, they have the tool available, which is acknowledged by their providers in case there is any user's complaint. But yet, in the UK, they work differently. They are self-regulated, but yet they agree that the results have to be respected still. So I cannot stress enough that that is a consumer's basic right, and it has to be verified. That was a first goal. A second objective would be transparency. The tool can help in the transparency of the offer and also to simplify those tools to our consumers. The new regulatory framework expects that on broadband offer, we should notify, download and upload information, which is exactly the parameter applied by metric tools. Much has been said, written, and regulated. Max and minimum velocity, so complicated. I agree. And that now will also contribute to simplify all these max and minimum up and download measurements. And still a third pillar or a third factor, which is very dear to us, which is consumers' education and information of quality. These are two key pillars for Anatel's, where we have to improve transparency and the quality of a broadband service that lies on the information and consumers learning. We believe that will be a great starting point for learning aspects. And Anatel, that's very precious to NIC.br and Anatel. And NIC is so careful about consumers' education.
É muito importante para justamente os pequenos prestadores, porque como você colocou, o problema
and providers also care about that. As everyone has really well said, the problem is not within the band, but informing and teaching consumers about their personal experience in using the internet, in the use of the internet. And if you have a reference tool that will help you in the measurement practices. Let's say that you measured your internet and the result is bad. A local network checklist is ideal before anything else. And this, in my opinion, is the most important component of all. That's exactly what Anatel expects from that tool. Self-verification and the possibility to breach loyalty. But the goal here is to fulfill all the regulatory aspects, and we hope that the tool will be a way to increase coverage and to become a flexible tool. I prefer not making any comments about the legal part because I'm not keen on these legal issues. But as a layperson, I believe there won't be any additional issues. That's it from my side. Okay, thank you.
Okay, just to clarify things before we open to questions from the audience in general. And by the way, I will do that very soon. So if you want to ask questions, get ready. Okay, so you mentioned that one of the points of interest of Anatel in the tool is a trend that is in the world to establish official measurement tools. Teleco regulators of several countries. But going back to ESEC, isn't ESEC an official tool? I understood that it is not designed for individual measurements. Okay, but this global trend, is it to have a different line of tools for individual measurements? So could you talk a bit more about that, just to clarify? It's very simple. The tool we are talking about to be developed by NIC is a user tool. It's a user tool. The user is going to have a set of informations. They are going to check their things. Exact tool is a tool to collect indicators. So perhaps Andre can talk a bit more about the operation, but the concept, it is a tool to collect indicators. So it is a tool that listens and says statistically what's going on. So it does not individualize. There is nothing individual about exact tool. It does not talk about a single consumer. It says, well, provider network X in city Z is statistically good, bad, with speed within the right parameters or not, but no individualization. What we're talking about now is a user tool, and that's the concept. You're talking about two things. Exact will continue to exist. They will continue collecting data to generate statistical quality indicators. This is individual, that we're talking about the user. Well, we have a line of people to ask questions. So Douglas Fisher, your question? Well, hello. In this myriad of possibilities of the tools, the first thing that came to mind is how open is data going to be for the general audience, the general population, both in terms of details or anonymity, companies, regions. And this question has a very specific objective because in addition to the quality of the individual service, there are correlations. For instance, one thing that I'm interested in is the observability of AMHRST, which is an institution directed to the safety of internet routing. So we can use the data to feed manners because service denial affects quality, for example. So just for us to try and correlate things. So first question, how open will data be? Of course, it cannot be totally open because you have a concern about data privacy. But how open will data be and how can we access that? Thank you. Well, unfortunately, the answer is we don't know. But as you're probably doing, we are also considering what kind of limits and what we can do with the data. So this is something that is still to be analyzed. We see that for Anatel, this data is very important, also to work statistically, but it is one step at a time. And the first step is that this is user data. Again, this is a tool for individuals and not for statistics. So You have LGPD, the Brazilian Data Protection Law, but we are always considering what we can do with data. But for now, I don't have an answer. I personally have a long wish list of what to do with the data, but right now we haven't decided on anything. Anyone else would like to comment on the panel? So next question. I am Ayubi from Saint Networks, and I see that panelists have a lot of good intentions, but so does hell, and we have to pay attention to details. Because perhaps we are using a tool that does not exist for a problem that does not exist. And I'm going to tell you why. Because, you know, a tool that does not exist. Users think that measurement is a ruler or a scale. And in internet, we don't have that. As we say, and Milton said that, Denner said that, you know, we have a best of effort point. From one point of the internet to the other, there is no guarantee that you're going to have the same as you had before. So my concern for a tool that does not exist, it's a stress test, it's not a ruler, it's not a scale. And then you say that it's a official measurement to users, and they're going to have a stress test of the device that they have. It is a very, very narrow snapshot. Even if the bandwidth is reached, it doesn't mean that the whole process is correct. So perhaps we are using measurement that in the minds of the consumer can be confusing, not for us, but for consumers is misleading because they think measurement is a scale, it's a kilo of beans, and they are having a stress test that is not necessarily what is being delivered to him because there are other things. So they are not measuring internet. In telecommunications, you have tools for measurement. You have RFC 2544, you have two devices connected on an IP network, and that's okay. But on the internet, I think that this tool may be misunderstood by users. And the information means that any place on the internet will have the same speed. And also, the internet is less being used than being used. If you think of the total capacity in the peak hour divided by subscribers, we say that people are consuming about 2 MB, and the plans is 1 GB. So people are offering high speeds that users do not use. And when you are having a measurement tool that does not measure, it is a stress test. It gives the users impressions that users are limiting speed or not delivering speed. So bandwidth is cheaper and cheaper. So we have on our shoulders the idea that for providers to be successful, they have to limit speeds to users. It's not true. People are using it less than more. So how can you use those good intentions without creating a tool that is a stress test and not a measurement, and that is not really measuring the internet, but the telecommunications? You brought an important point. What are we measurement? Because what are we measuring? I'm sorry. Because you talk about 100 megabits connection, 200 megabits. What should we guarantee? So you have also the exchange of traffic from other servers to get to the connection. A trend that we have observed in last 3 years, and it has to do with what Maya mentioned, because we have the CDNs, caches. So you're talking about the internal speed that users have inside the provider network. And DTCall and the group that is going to discuss and detail methodology is exactly what servers are going to be connected. And perhaps we find the arguments that it would be the provider network, as we do today. We have already tests at the servers. For instance, ESAC are inside the providers' networks. So there is an argumentation for that. And the answer is clear. Measurement is not talking about the bandwidth that the user has to reach a destination outside the provider network. I think you're raising a very important point, and this is certainly going to feed the discussion for the collaboration that we are going to have within the GT that is going to detail the methodology. And just to add to the question, perhaps, because in my mind it was clear before, but now I have a question after his question. You're talking about a tool that measures the quality of the telecommunications service only based on Onatel resolution. So the tool is not measuring the internet. It is measuring the quality of the SCM or the mobile service, correct? Or are we talking about measuring the quality of the internet, the quality of routing? You're talking about SCM, you're talking about multimedia service, which is broadband. I think there are two things that are very interesting in your question. Saying that there are things that we understand what we are talking about, but not users. And I think this has to do with something that I think everybody mentioned, which is an opportunity that the tool gives us for the education of consumers so that consumers can understand it better, the transparency of what they're buying. So I think that this is something that the agency has as one of its main objectives. So in addition to reference, to process, to compliance, it has to do with education to consumers that more and more are within this realm of connectivity. Yes? I'm not getting my feedback, but I'll continue to speak. And another point about the problem that does not exist, I think that we are very confident about how the agency works with regulations. You have the regulatory impact, you see the kind of the problem, how you can address it. And after implementation of any rule, including this one, we go through a continued process that we call in our language analysis of regulatory performance results. So I think it is a possibility, an opportunity for us to have concrete subsidies that this is not an issue. And if it's not, we can discontinue that. But for our cases, if it's not the situation, then users are going to continue to have the tool for them to exercise their rights in case of conflict and etc. So I think it's a win-win process, really. We do have some time, but I'm going to ask Julio to be the last person to ask the questions so that we have time for us to have a final round in the panel. So ask brief questions so that everyone will have time to give their final remarks. So I'm Evandro from CIS Networks. Well, about 2 years ago, when I worked with ESP, because there was the complaint of a customer talked about incoherent measurements on the Brasil Banda Larga website. And working with the customer, we saw that the stress test tool was just available for IPv4. After filing a complaint with Anatel and not receiving a coherent answer, I went with this complaint to the GTA list. And it seems that 1 year later, this website, the stress test portal, became accessible to IPv6. However, the test was only performed with IPv4. So, if this information is not correct now, I apologize, but should we expect coherence and good sense in the development of this new tool so that it will work with IPv6 connectivity and, if possible, IPv6 only and exclude IPv4? I think that in addition to technicalities, there is another aspect that is more structural, which is the participation of everyone in the construction of the tool, of the whole rationale of operation. And I think it has to be an operational tool, and that's why we are going to have the forum of the GT call expanded to providers so that everyone can participate. And it's a very important, associations have an important role to really bring together all these requests so that from start we can have the broadest and most concrete diagnosis to work with, because that's the intention. So coherence, that, well, we want the tool to be as thorough as possible, but for that we need case studies, challenges, and the participation of everyone, both participative but also proactive participation from all associations that uh, have a channel of communication with the agency and can channel all these proposals. I think it is really an important role for the success of the tool. And if NIC.br develops a tool that does not measure IPv6, I give up and I'm going to sell coconut water on the beach. So if it depends on us, you're going to have IPv6. This is Moacir Neto. I'm an engineer. Could you speak a bit closer to the mic? Moacir Neto. I'm an engineer. I've recently graduated. I don't know if that's what you said, but to me, speed is not quality. What variables are you considering in this measurement? Because is it latency, jitter? But how do you measure quality? Yes, I don't know, the provider doing something. Is there any specifics? At NIC, we are sure that quality is not speed, because I don't know, I have today an internet of 50 megabits, which is okay. I never felt the need to increase the speed. And we try to work with that on our measurements and assessments. When you're talking about the quality process that is based on measurements, you assess different things. You have speed, upload, download, latency, jitter, and you have some cutoff values, thresholds, which are, in my opinion, even very generous. Perhaps historically, at the time of VSL, that's what we decided to do. But with this tool, and you may correct me if I'm wrong, I think the consumer regulation talks about speed
Eu só
specifically.
queria resumir isso.
Yeah, I just
Também
wanted to
acredito
say that. I agree with you that
que
speed is not
velocidade não é sinônimo de
quality,
qualidade. Mas, como vocês até discutiram muito
but it
ontem,
is what was said
veja bem que isso é
yesterday.
uma ferramenta do
See,
consumidor para garantir o
this
direito do
is a
consumidor.
user
E,
tool to
infelizmente, é o
protect
que é vendido, é
users' rights.
velocidade.
And this is what is
Né?
sold. What is
Isso
sold
que é
is speed.
ofertado.
This is what
Então,
is
isso
offered.
é que
This is what
precisa
is in
ser mensurado.
contracts.
E eu
So this
concordo
is what has to
completamente
be
que isso
measured. I
a
agree
qualidade não
with
se
you.
traduz só nisso.
Quality
Né?
is not about
Mas
that.
é importante
But
dizer o seguinte, que
it's important to
esse é o
say
parâmetro que será
that
medido, porque
this
esse é
is
o
the
parâmetro
parameter to
que
be
é
measured
vendido.
because this is the parameter that is sold.
É só essa questão que nós
And it's
concordamos
only
completamente
that.
que a
I
qualidade vai
agree with
muito
you.
além
Quality
da
is
questão
way
da
beyond
velocidade.
speed.
Complementando ali, a qualidade eu
And
acredito
just to
também tem uma
add,
perspectiva muito mais sistêmica.
quality it has a much more systemic, global quality. When you're talking about consumer protection tools, you are individualizing. Quality is something that we monitor with different indicators, latencies. It goes beyond technical network issues. It considers time of service, consumers' perception, amount of complaints. If there is a technical visit, how long it takes. So there is a group of very different indicators, including technical aspects that really makes a global assessment of quality. So you're talking about complementary things. You have the user perspective, the user pain, and then, an assessment of service in a certain region, in a certain period of time, that is not necessarily a user experience individually. And what you said now says specifically about our call. So if you think of the general consumer protection laws, this is not going to be taken in consideration. What is taken in consideration is this tool that is to be developed, discussed in a group to be created as of January. So these assumptions are not going to be considered. Consumers with this tool, if there is a speed below what was in contract, in theory, will be able to terminate the contract without loyalty. Correct? Yes. What I said, you're talking about two different things. You're talking about quality that goes beyond the speed, and it's not the quality of the service. It's not necessarily a individual user view. I think the objective, the purpose of this discussion is this. The mission is to address this other concern, that there is a quality monitoring that is much more encompassing than the user tests, and one and the other are complementary. So you have to have a user tool, but you also have something that is a bit more systemic, general, that is important. So I think they are complementary to one another. Júlio? I have some online questions. Some have been answered, but there is one. I'm not a specialist. I don't know if I understood the question right, so I'm going to ask it for you. From Leonie Seni. He says, the data collected Is it going to be correlated for the analysis of sub-notifications that are sent to Anatel?
Eu acho que como o... Tá funcionando? Só o meu aparelhinho que tá
I'm sorry,
engasgando aqui, eu fico
my
sem entender se
headset
tá me ouvindo.
is not working super well. But anyway,
O João bem colocou ali no
as
começo,
João very well put it,
perguntaram sobre correlação, né,
to ask about correlation, right?
Vou repetir a pergunta rapidinho.
Can you repeat the question very quickly?
Eu confesso que eu não consegui
My
entender.
headset's not working. I did not understand it, to tell you the truth. The question is if you are going to correlate data to detect sub-notifications or anything of the kind. No, at least not for now.
Não sei responder essa pergunta.
I don't know how
porque
to answer the
como falando,
question,
a questão
but
dos dados, da utilização
data, use of data is not the key point, and is not in phase one of this journey. Perhaps it's something for us to think about later on, how this can be used strictly in compliance with the Brazilian protection law.
Como o João bem colocou, realmente
Yes, as
por hora a
João
gente ainda está
mentioned
numa
it, for
fase inicial do
now,
processo
we
de
are
relação
at
ao
a
levantamento de
very
dificuldades
beginning
operacionais,
phase. We are surveying
para a construção dessa
operational
base ainda
difficulties to be
e
able
porventura eu
to
acredito
start
sim
building
que
the
é uma
tool.
informação
I believe
rica o
that this
suficiente que pode
is
ser utilizada
information that could be
com essa
used
finalidade em um segundo
for this
contexto. Não
purpose,
necessariamente, que não é o
but
objetivo nem nada,
it's
mas
not the
eventualmente eu vejo
objective
sim
or the primary
potencial para
objective of this
utilização
tool.
nesse
But I do
nessa
see
finalidade,
potential
ainda que combinada, claro,
for this
com outras
use,
informações que
again,
dispõe
combined with other
agência,
information
no
that
sentido
the
de
agency has available
tentar mapear, identificar
in
esse
a way
problema de
of trying
subnotificação,
to
conforme o próprio
address
presidente da agência colocou
sub-notification, as the CEO of the agency himself
objetivo
mentioned
central aí
as one of the core objectives for Anatel's next year challenges. Very well then. So now we are going to have a round of final remarks before we close the panel. So Maya, would you like to start? Anything that you would like to add, comment? Well, once again, this is a discussion on speed. I think yesterday we did talk about that. We talked about prices and price wars, and we, small and large providers, are responsible for the discussion because we translated internet quality into speed, which is wrong. So perhaps it is an opportunity for us to start, thinking about that and perhaps trying to change this concept that we took to the minds of consumers. It was we that started saying that quality is speed, which is not. So, a mea culpa here of small and large providers that decided to take this path, focusing on speed when there are so many more involved in the quality of the process. Thank you. Maria Elisa? Well, just to add to that, I think that we have to focus on education, not only of consumers, of the general population as well, because many, and even our peers, sometimes are not aware of a bit more technical issues. And again, they have a false impression, a false perception that the service is not being provided with quality. So that's what I would have to add. Thank you all very much. Anatel, André, João, would you like to make your final remarks? Well, first, I would like to thank for the invite, the opportunity of being here to talk to you, as well mentioned in the beginning, of demystifying some concerns, but also to make sure that the way we want the process to be conducted is very nice. So we are discussing methodologies, we are mapping challenges, And the second step was going to be addressing the difficulties that are going to be surveyed. So for that, we want to count on you all to detect challenges and difficulties. I believe that we can only succeed if the whole industry is working in a propositive way so that we can get, in the end, with a tool that really contemplates our concerns. And that can be an education transformational tool for everyone. It has to be win-win. What is the way for small providers to get involved in the discussion and take part in the work group? How can they do that? I think this is very important to highlight as you were asking them to take part.
João, could you please make some comments? I don't know if I can give you any specific details, but it's a very straightforward concept. As the tools, they have as their source a general regulation, RGC. Everyone, all providers, above 5,000 accesses. I mean, almost all of them, but few things or some of the things for those are restricted for those with over 5,000 accesses. And the working group, it is franchised to all providers. I don't really know about the procedures thing.
Certo? No momento em que for constituído o grupo e foi iniciados os trabalhos, é feita uma convocação pública.
And a public hearing, public consultations.
Mas aqui eu vejo papel muito importante das associações, né?
And I see a very significant role of the associations. Once we have a well-established communication channel between the agencies and associations that is highly covered. So I see a partnership from the associations being acted with a broader scope, with a first contact to be able to solidify the network from now on. Would you like to add anything to it? Yes, briefly, let me say that the implementation group is made by several entities, those which represent large, small, and middle-sized companies, as well as the participation of the companies themselves. They are all impacted. Similarly, the idea is to have a joint meeting so we'll be able to see the more the merrier, but associations involved. If we combine both forums where they regulate consumers' rights, for the general public, what is the best way? Maybe to look for associations and, to start their participation from them, from there. Holger, final remarks. Holger is one of the coordinators from measurement.
Só para deixar a última falação com o NIC, tá? Eu só queria realmente agradecer o convite do NIC, presença aqui, para a gente dar pontapé, colocar.
I'd like to thank NIC.br to know exactly what is the timing and what is the status of that implementation. And I'd like to congratulate for the event, which is really, really nice. We would like to thank you all, participation, Anatel, Brintis, Holger, you are the last one. You have some announcements about CIMED. But before anything, our goal was to let you know that this is a tool and some gossips and uncertainties about what that is, and that it has this way of consumers' rights and education. Once the tool educates, it can also become an instrument which will help providers in their work. I'm very happy because we are tackle upon quality and not just velocity. I see operators, telcos, adding not just velocity, but the best Wi-Fi ever. And if that is a correction to the market, welcome. And then we are going to measure again to verify all promises to consumers. So thank you to all of you for your time and attention. And NIC.br as a technical partner of the project, it has to work according to the formal forum. I mean, we are here to listen to your contributions, but don't forget about the proper forum, which should be the Anatel one for quality regulatory aspects. So please know exactly what to expect from us. Let's be careful and follow the Anatel procedures. Do we have time for one last slide?
Já na esteira também pouco de preparação para esta ferramenta que a gente vai criar para a Anatel, né? A gente fez uma reescrita dos medidores.
We have rewritten the CIMED measures. And today I would like to invite you all to enroll yourselves and participate. We are expecting to release that by March. And we are interested on your feedback, usability. We are going to get into a tool tuning cycle. Tools, they have to be tuned, verified, a beta test. And it can be one of the tech bases for implementation of the official test Anatel channel. Thank you. That's it. Once again, thank you so much to all of you for your participation in this panel, and thanks for our public in the premises and those who have joined us remotely. Thank you so much. This panel is over now. Have a good lunchtime.
Obrigado, Moreiras. Obrigado aos panelistas. Muito obrigado. Antes de sair para o almoço,
before we break for lunch, I would like to let the remote participants that the afternoon link for your connection are different, are others, okay? So please be back at 2 p.m.